Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow. I withdrew all the money from your accounts and sold your ranch. Bye. When I read that text from my son, I just burst out laughing. I laughed so hard that tears streamed down my face. He had no idea that the ranch he sold was actually. But I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story until the very end. And tell me what city you're watching from. That way, I can see just how far my story has traveled. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dorothy Johnson. I'm 67 years old, and for 42 years I built my life carefully, brick by brick. I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in Atlanta, Georgia. I work part-time at the community library, and I've always enjoyed my quiet, simple routine. My son, Chris, is 38. He's always been ambitious, maybe a little too ambitious. It all started 3 months before that devastating message. Chris called me asking for my bank account numbers. "Mom, I need to help you set up automatic payments," he said in that smooth, honey-sweet voice. "You're getting older, and I don't want you to forget to pay something important." My chest tightened a bit, but he was my son, my only son. His father passed away when Chris was 14, and I raised him on my own. I worked 3 jobs. I sacrificed everything. Surely I could trust him, right? Wrong. Well, I never imagined I'd be here telling this story. But I need to get it off my chest, you know? I need someone to hear what my own son did to me. Maybe you'll understand what I'm still trying to wrap my head around. It was a Tuesday morning, late October. I was in the kitchen making my coffee, the same way I always had, with the cinnamon I buy from Mr. Peterson's grocery store. The morning light poured through the window, illuminating the wooden table where my late husband, Robert, and I had shared breakfast for over 30 years. He'd been gone for 4 years, yet I still missed him every single day. The house in Atlanta felt far too quiet without him. My phone buzzed on the counter, a message from Chris, my 38-year-old son. My heart always skipped a beat when he texted. After all, he was all the close family I had left. I picked up the phone smiling, expecting maybe a "Good morning, Saga Mom," or a picture from somewhere nice. What I read made me stop breathing. "Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow. I withdrew all the money from your accounts and sold your ranch. Bye." I read it once, then again, and again. The words didn't make any sense. My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Withdrew all the money, sold my ranch. It had to be some sick joke. Chris had always had a strange sense of humor, but this was far too cruel even for him. I called the bank immediately. My fingers could barely dial from how nervous I was. The woman who answered, Keisha, had that sweet, professional voice. But when she pulled up my account, her tone changed completely. "Mrs. Johnson, are you noticing any unusual activity?" My stomach dropped. "Please tell me the balance." "Your savings account has $1,200 and your checking account has $53. I couldn't speak, not a single word. The $134,000 I had saved over 42 years of hard work, including Robert's life insurance, a lifetime of sacrifices, was simply gone, vanished, stolen. "Mrs. Johnson, are you still there?" Keisha sounded worried. Who authorized these transfers?" My voice came out weak, barely a whisper. "Let me check." I heard typing. "They were made through the online portal, transferred to an account under the name Christopher Johnson. That's your son, correct?" I hung up. I just hung up and stood there, staring at that kitchen that had witnessed so many family breakfasts, so much laughter, so many plans. How could my son, the boy I carried in my arms, the child I raised alone after his father died, do this to me? I sat down before my legs gave out, and that's when I started laughing. Yes, laughing. A soft laugh at first, then louder, until tears streamed down my face. It wasn't a happy laugh, you understand. It was the kind that comes when a situation is so absurd, so surreal, that your mind doesn't know how else to react. Because there was one thing Chris didn't know. One very important thing. The ranch he sold. The one in Marietta. With the 7 acres I bought 15 years ago as an investment, he really did sell it. But that ranch had tenants. The Morrison family had been living there for 4 years and still had 18 months left on a valid lease. Chris had just sold an occupied property without informing the buyers, without warning the tenants, and without having any legal right to do so. And my real home, the one where I was sitting, shaking with rage and disbelief, that house was worth nearly $700,000 and was held in a family trust Robert had set up before he died under his mother's name. Chris didn't even know that trust existed. He grew up in that house, but he never understood the legal structure behind it. My greedy, clueless son had just committed real estate fraud and theft all in a single day, and had no idea what kind of bomb he'd set off under his own feet. I wiped the tears from my face and took a deep breath. In that moment, something shifted inside me. Sweet Dorothy, the understanding mother, the lonely widow who always put her son first. She was gone. In her place stood someone I didn't fully recognize yet, but who was ready for war. I picked up the phone again and called Patricia, my best friend of 20 years. She answered on the second ring. "Dottie, everything okay?" "Pat, I need your help." My voice was steady now, no shaking at all. "I need the name of that lawyer you know, the one who specializes in fraud." "Oh my God, what happened?" "My son just robbed me," I said calmly. "And I'm going to make him pay for every single cent." 3 months before that message, I should have seen the signs. But you never want to believe your own child is capable of doing something bad, right? You make excuses. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You convince yourself you must be reading things wrong. Chris called me on a Thursday night. I remember because it was the day I always watched my TV shows with a cup of chamomile tea. His voice sounded upbeat, full of energy. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" "You're getting older, and I worry about you being there alone, managing all those accounts, bills, that kind of stuff." He paused. "What if I helped you organize everything, set up automatic payments and all that? That way you wouldn't have to stress." My heart actually warmed. Funny how naive I was, right? I thought it was genuine concern. "Oh, Chris, that's very kind of you, but I manage just fine." "I know you do, Mom. But what if something happens? What if you forget to pay an important bill? Or if you get sick again, like when you had pneumonia?" His tone grew more insistent. "Just give me the account numbers. I'll just take a look. Get things organized for you." I hesitated. Somewhere deep in my mind, a warning light flickered on. But it was my son asking. My only son. The boy I raised on my own after Robert died of a heart attack when Chris was just 14. I worked 3 jobs to educate him, to pay for college, to make sure he had opportunities I never had. Let me think about it, okay? His voice cooled slightly. "Sure, Mom. Take your time. Just don't wait too long. This stuff matters." 2 weeks later, he showed up at my house without warning. He brought his girlfriend, Jasmine. I'd met her before, but I'd always found her off. She was 29, nearly 10 years younger than Chris, perfectly styled, dressed head to toe in designer clothes, long manicured nails, and a way of looking at things that made me uneasy. They sat in my living room while I served iced tea. It was a hot Saturday afternoon, and Jasmine looked around. And when I say looked around, I mean everything. Her eyes swept over the furniture, the framed photos on the walls, the antique clock on the mantel that had belonged to Robert's grandmother. "This house must be worth quite a bit now, Mrs. Johnson," she said, not even trying to hide it. "Real estate in Atlanta has gone way up these past few years." "It's my home," I replied simply. "I have no intention of selling." Chris laughed and took her hand. "Of course not, Mom. Jasmine's just making conversation." But there was something in the way he looked at her, some unspoken understanding between the two, that made my stomach twist. I didn't like it. Not one bit. Before leaving, Chris brought up the accounts again. "Mom, have you thought about what I said? About giving me access to help with the payments? I don't know why I gave in. Maybe loneliness. Maybe the need to believe my son truly cared. Maybe because when you raise a child alone, sacrifice everything for them, you want to believe that love came back to you somehow." "Okay," I said, "but only for emergencies, Chris? Only if I really need help." His smile came too fast. "Of course, Mom, just for emergencies." 6 weeks passed. Everything seemed normal. Chris called now and then, always rushed, always with an excuse for not visiting. Work, commitments. Jasmine needed him. I understood, or at least I pretended to. Until one Sunday morning, when I checked my accounts online like I always did, coffee in hand. Something looked off, small transfers. $500 here, $1,000 there. Nothing outrageous at first glance, but when I added it all up, more than $15,000 had left my account in just 3 weeks. I called Chris immediately. He answered, half asleep. "Mom, it's early. What's going on?" "Chris, why are there transfers coming out of my account?" Silence. Then, "Oh, yeah. Sorry, Mom. I forgot to tell you. I had some unexpected expenses. I'll pay it back next week." "What kind of expenses?" "Work stuff. Look, I can't talk right now. Jasmine's here. We'll talk later." He hung up before I could say another word. I stared at my phone, that sick feeling growing heavier in my chest. But I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe he'd pay it back, that it was just a temporary loan between a mother and her son. 2 weeks later, another bomb dropped. I was organizing some old papers when I found an envelope I didn't remember seeing before. Inside were documents, official-looking papers with my signature on them, a power of attorney granting Chris control over my assets. My blood ran cold. I had never signed that. Never. I looked closer. The date was from a year earlier, November, the month I'd been hospitalized with severe pneumonia. And then I remembered. Chris had come to the hospital with a folder saying they were health insurance papers I needed to sign. I had a 103-degree fever, barely able to keep my eyes open, drugged on antibiotics. He put the pen in my hand, held my wrist steady, and I signed. I signed without reading. I signed because I trusted him. I sat on the bed holding those papers, and for the first time, the truth hit me full force. My son had deceived me. He had taken advantage of me while I was sick and vulnerable, tricked me into signing documents that left me completely exposed. This wasn't an accident. It was planned. I cried that afternoon. I cried for the foolish mother I'd been. I cried for the son I thought I'd raised, but who had never truly existed. I cried for a betrayal that hurt deeper than anything I had ever felt. Then I wiped my tears, tucked those papers away somewhere safe, and started paying real attention. If Chris was plotting something, I was going to find out exactly what it was. And I was going to protect myself. I just didn't realize how fast it would happen, that 3 weeks later, I'd receive that message, and that the life I thought I knew would completely fall apart. After I hung up with Patricia, I sat at the kitchen table and forced my brain to start working. I couldn't panic. Panic was exactly what Chris was counting on. He expected me to fall apart, confused, desperate, helpless, a scared old woman who didn't know how to defend herself. But he forgot one very important thing. Before I retired and started working part-time at the library, I spent 23 years working in law offices. I started as a receptionist, moved up to legal assistant, and finished as a senior paralegal. I knew contracts, I knew fraud, and I knew exactly how the system worked. I opened my laptop and got to work. First, I logged into my bank account and took screenshots of every transaction from the past 6 months. Every transfer, every withdrawal, every suspicious movement. I saved everything in a separate folder, backed it up to the cloud and onto a flash drive. Then I went to the drawer, pulled out the fake power of attorney documents, and scanned every single page. My phone rang. It was Chris. For the first time since that horrible message, he was actually calling me. I took a deep breath and answered, keeping my voice as calm as I possibly could. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded cheerful, carefree, as if he hadn't just robbed me blind. "Did you get my message?" I did. "So, aren't you going to congratulate me? I'm getting married tomorrow." I bit my tongue hard. "Chris, the bank called me asking about suspicious activity in my account." He sighed, annoyed. "Oh, Mom, come on. Don't make this complicated. I needed that money. Jasmine and I are starting our life together. You don't need all that cash just sitting there. You've got your retirement, Social Security. You'll be fine." "You stole from me, Chris." "I didn't steal anything. I had power of attorney. It's all legal." His voice hardened. "Look, I don't want to fight. Tomorrow's my wedding. I'm getting married at Riverside Country Club, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I expect you to be there. Be happy for your son." "And the ranch? You sold my property?" "I did. And for a great price, by the way. $340,000. That money's going toward the down payment on an apartment downtown. Jasmine's always wanted to live somewhere nice." I gripped the phone so hard I thought it might crack. "Chris, that ranch has tenants. The Morrison family lives there. They have a valid lease for another 18 months. Silence. Long, heavy silence. "What?" His voice came out strange. "You didn't know. Of course you didn't, because you didn't bother to check. You sold an occupied property, Chris. That's fraud." I have power of attorney. I can sell whatever's yours." "That power of attorney was obtained illegally. You had me sign it when I was practically unconscious in the hospital. The notary who stamped it wasn't even in the same state on the date listed. I already checked." Another silence. This time I could hear him breathing hard. "Mom, don't do this. Please, don't ruin my wedding." "I'm not ruining anything. You ruined it the moment you decided to steal from me." "I'll give the money back." His voice jumped, panicked now. "I'll figure something out. I swear. Just don't call the bank. Don't make a scene, please." "When are you going to give it back, Chris? In how many years?" I don't know, but I will. You have to trust me." I let out a bitter laugh. "Trust you? After what you did?" "I'm your son," he was shouting now. "Your only son. You worked your whole life to give me a good life. And now you won't help me when I need it the most. Helping you would have been lending you money if you'd asked. This isn't help, Chris. This is theft." I heard Jasmine in the background asking who it was. Chris pulled the phone away and spoke to her, but I could still hear him. "It's my mom. She's being dramatic about the money." Dramatic. That's what he called my pain. My betrayal. "Chris," I said, my voice ice cold now, "I'm giving you a chance. One single chance. You cancel this wedding, return every cent you stole, and fix the mess you made with the ranch sale. Do that, and I'll consider not pressing charges." He laughed right in my face. "Cancel my wedding? Have you lost your mind? Look, Mom, you're just going to have to swallow this. The money's gone. The wedding's paid for. the apartment's bought, it's over. Either you accept it, show up tomorrow, and smile, or you lose your son forever. Your choice." And then he hung up. I sat there staring at the phone, feeling a coldness spread through my chest. It wasn't pain anymore. It was something else. Clarity. My son had made his choice. Now I was going to make mine. Patricia arrived an hour later with Martin Green, the attorney. He was a black man in his early 50s, gray at the temples, square-framed glasses, serious but kind. We sat in the living room and I told him everything, every detail. I showed him the documents, the bank screenshots, explained the fake power of attorney, the illegal sale of the ranch. Martin took notes, his expression growing more and more grave. "Mrs. Johnson," he said when I finished, "this is extremely serious. Your son has committed multiple crimes: theft, fraud, forgery. He's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison." "I know. And you want to move forward, sue your own son." I looked down at my hands that had rocked that boy to sleep as a baby, that had cooked thousands of meals for him, that had worked until they bled to give him everything he needed. "I want justice, Mr. Green." He gave me a choice: accept the theft or lose my son. So I've already lost my son. The Chris I knew, the one I loved, would never have done this. "The man who robbed me, he's a stranger," Martin nodded. "Then we start now. First, you report this to the bank immediately to block any further transactions. Second, we contact the title company that handled the ranch sale. They need to know it was fraudulent. Third, you decide whether you want to file a police report today or wait until after the wedding." "After the wedding," I said. "I want him to enjoy the day. I want him to think he won. Because when he finds out the truth, the fall will be much harder." Patricia squeezed my hand. "Are you sure, Dottie? Once this starts, there's no going back." "I'm sure." That night, I called the Morrisons. Tom Morrison answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Johnson, is everything okay?" "Tom, I need to tell you something. Sit down. It's not good news." I took a deep breath. "My son sold the ranch where you live, without telling me, without telling you. The sale was fraudulent, but the buyers don't know yet that the property is occupied." "What?" His voice exploded through the phone. "Sold it? What about our lease?" "Your lease is still valid. I have everything documented, Tom. You're protected. I just wanted to warn you before the buyers show up. My lawyer is handling everything." "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Mrs. Johnson, especially coming from your own son." His voice softened. "If you need anything, statements, testimony, whatever, you can count on us." "Thank you, Tom. That means more than you know." After I hung up, I went to my bedroom and opened the closet. In the back, inside an old shoebox, was an envelope I hadn't opened in years. Inside were photos from when Chris was little, Chris learning how to walk, Chris on his first day of school, Chris graduating college, beaming in his cap and gown, and me beside him, smiling, so happy, so proud. I looked at those photos and cried. I cried for the boy who no longer existed. I cried for the mother I'd been, who gave everything and now had nothing. I cried for the future I'd imagined: grandchildren, family dinners, Chris taking care of me when I got old. All of that died with that text message. I put the photos back, closed the box, and went to bed. Tomorrow was the wedding, and I would be there, smiling, posing for pictures, playing the role of the proud mother. Because Chris deserved one last happy day before discovering he'd destroyed his own life. The wedding was scheduled for 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the Riverside Country Club. I woke up early that day with my stomach in knots. I'd slept poorly, dreaming about Chris as a little boy, asking to be held, saying, "I love you, Mommy," in that tiny child's voice. I chose my best dress, an elegant navy blue one I'd bought for a friend's wedding last year. I did my hair, put on lipstick, and fastened the pearl earrings Robert had given me on our 20th wedding anniversary. In the mirror, I looked like a proud mother heading out to celebrate her son's happiness. On the inside, I was pure ice. Patricia offered to go with me, but I said no. This was something I needed to do alone. I drove to the club with gospel music playing on the radio, asking God for the strength to get through the day without falling apart. The Riverside Country Club was exactly the kind of flashy, expensive place Jasmine loved. A massive crystal chandelier at the entrance, thick carpets, white flowers everywhere. All of it paid for with my stolen money. The irony cut deep. I arrived half an hour before the ceremony. A few people were already there. Chris's friends I didn't recognize, Jasmine's family. A woman approached me, smiling from ear to ear. "You must be the groom's mother. I'm Denise, Jasmine's mom." She hugged me with that over-the-top enthusiasm. "I'm so happy our children found each other." "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "Quite the surprise. Jasmine told me the wedding was a bit last minute, but when you know it's the right person, why wait, right?" She chuckled, and she said you helped a lot with the expenses. How generous of you. Generous? She called theft generosity. "A mother will do anything for her child," I replied, every word burning in my throat. Chris appeared a few minutes later, dressed in a black tuxedo with a light blue tie. He looked handsome, I'll admit that. For just a second, my mother's heart filled with that foolish pride, my grown boy about to get married. Then he opened his mouth. "Mom, you came." He hugged me tightly, but the hug felt mechanical, empty. "I was afraid you wouldn't show up. I wouldn't miss my son's wedding." He searched my eyes, looking for anger, for accusation, but I kept my face neutral, calm. I even gave him a small smile. "About yesterday," he began, lowering his voice. "Sorry if I was harsh. Everything's been crazy and stressful. You know how it is." "I do." "And about the money. We'll talk after the honeymoon, okay? I'll figure out how to make things right with you." A lie. I could see it on his face. Still, I nodded as if I believed him. Then Jasmine appeared. And when I say appeared, I mean an entrance. A white wedding gown covered in beading that must have cost $10,000–$15,000 at least. Lace veil. A bouquet of white roses. She looked stunning. I won't deny it. And she knew it. "Mrs. Johnson," she said brightly. "I'm so glad you came. Chris was worried." "I wouldn't miss this for the world," I said, keeping my voice sweet. "You'll be sitting in the front row next to my mother. After all, we're family now." She slipped her arm through mine, giving it a light squeeze. "And thank you for everything, for the help, the support. You're a wonderful mother-in-law." Help, support. The words felt like knives. The ceremony started right at 3. Classical music played as everyone stood when Jasmine entered the room. Chris was waiting at the front, eyes shining when he saw her. And do you know what hurt the most, realizing that he truly loved her, or at least thought he did? The officiant led the ceremony. Traditional vows. In joy and in sorrow, in wealth and in poverty. When he said wealth, I almost laughed out loud. They certainly had wealth now. My wealth. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Chris kissed Jasmine, everyone applauded, and I clapped too. I clapped, smiled, and pretended my heart wasn't shattered into 1,000 pieces. The reception was held in the ballroom next door, tables decorated with flowers, a 3-tier cake, open bar, expensive champagne flowing non-stop, elaborate French dishes, live music, everything first class, all paid for with $134,000 that wasn't theirs. I sat at the head table beside Jasmine's family. Her mother, Denise, was already drunk before dinner even started, talking loudly about how her daughter had caught a good one. "That apartment they bought downtown," she said with a giggle. 2 bedrooms, a balcony with a view, a gym in the building. Jasmine's always had great taste, and Chris is so devoted to her. Devoted. With my money, devotion came easy. During dinner, Chris stood up to give a speech. He took the microphone and smiled at the crowd. "I want to thank everyone for being here today, especially my mother, Dorothy." He pointed at me, and all eyes turned my way. "Mom, you raised me on your own after my dad passed away. You worked hard your entire life to give me opportunities. Everything I am today, I owe to you." People applauded. Some even wiped away tears. What a touching scene, right? The son honoring his self-sacrificing mother. "And thank you for helping us start our life together the right way, for believing in us, for supporting us." He raised his glass. "A toast to the best mom in the world." "To Dorothy," everyone echoed, lifting their glasses. I raised mine too, smiled, waved, and drank that expensive champagne, feeling it go down bitter in my throat, helping, believing, supporting. Every word was a lie wrapped in fake gratitude. After dinner came the dancing. Chris and Jasmine opened the floor with a waltz. He twirled her around, both of them laughing, happy. At one point, he came over to me. "Mom, want to dance?" I didn't. I wanted to run out of there. But I stood up and walked onto the dance floor with him. We danced slowly, him leading the way like he'd learned in those dance classes before his high school prom. I'd paid for those lessons, bought his suit, taken pictures, so proud. "Thanks for being here, Mom," he said softly. "I know things got weird between us, but you're still my mother. You always will be." I looked at him, at the face I knew so well, the nose just like Robert's, the brown eyes that used to look at me with genuine love when he was little. "You're right, Chris. I'll always be your mother, and you'll always be my son. That will never change." He looked relieved. He thought I'd forgiven everything, that I'd let it go. Poor boy. He had no idea what was coming. The party went on late. Cake was cut. The bouquet was tossed. Jasmine grabbed the garter and threw it to the single men. Laughter, loud music, drunk guests dancing. I left at 9, before it ended. No one noticed. Everyone was too busy having fun. In the car, I finally let the tears fall. I cried the entire drive home. I cried for everything I'd lost. I cried for the son I loved, who had betrayed me in a way I never thought possible. But when I got home, I wiped my tears, walked inside, and called Martin Green. "Mr. Green, you can file the police report first thing tomorrow morning and move forward with all charges. Fraud, theft, forgery, everything." "Are you sure, Mrs. Johnson?" I looked at Robert's photo on the table in the living room. He was smiling in that picture, his arm around me, the two of us happy. "I'm sure. My son made his choice. Now I'm making mine." 3 days after the wedding, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was Chris. His voice came out high-pitched, frantic. "Mom, what did you do?" I was in the kitchen making coffee, like always. I put the phone on speaker and kept stirring my mug, nice and slow. "Good morning to you too, Chris." "Don't give me that good morning. The police just called me. They said there's a report filed against me. Fraud, theft, forgery." He was practically screaming. "You called the police?" "I did." "How could you do this to me? I'm your son." "And you're a thief," I said calmly, my voice cold. "Thieves face consequences." "I'm going to give the money back. I told you I would." "When, Chris, in 10 years, 20, you spent it all on a wedding and an apartment. How exactly are you planning to pay it back? I could hear Jasmine in the background, her shrill voice asking what was going on. The title company contacted me too, Chris went on, his voice cracking. They're saying the ranch sale was fraudulent, that there are tenants living there, that the buyers are going to sue me. He paused. Mom, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my job. Am I going to prison? Possibly. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything, Chris. You did. You chose to steal. You chose to forge documents. You chose to lie. Now, you get to choose how you deal with the consequences. I'm your son, your only son. How can you do this to me? That question, that damn question he threw at me like a shield, as if being my son erased everything he'd done. Chris, you're asking how I can do this. Try asking yourself how you could do what you did, how you could steal from me, how you could forge my signature while I was sick, vulnerable, trusting you. My voice shook just a little. How you could look me in the eye at your wedding and thank me for my help, knowing you'd robbed me. Silence on the other end. I gave you one chance, I continued. I told you to return the money and fix the mess you made. You laughed in my face, told me I had to swallow it. Remember? I was nervous. I was under pressure. No, Chris, you were being exactly who you are. And now you're going to face exactly who you are. Jasmine snatched the phone from him. Mrs. Johnson, this is Jasmine. Please, you need to drop these charges. Chris is going to lose his job. We're going to lose the apartment. His life is going to be over. You should have thought about that sooner. You're a bitter old woman. Her voice turned venomous, the mask finally slipping. You can't stand seeing your own son happy. You're alone and you want to drag him down with you. Jasmine, you're 29 years old. You're young, so let me give you a piece of free advice. When you marry a man who steals from his own mother, don't be surprised when he steals from you too. She hung up on me. I finished my coffee in peace and went to work at the library. It was a normal Thursday, and I had books to catalogue. Life went on, even when it felt like the world was falling apart. At lunchtime, Patricia showed up with sandwiches. I came to check on you. I'm fine. Dottie, you don't have to pretend with me. I set my pen down and looked at her. I'm not pretending, Spat. I really am fine. Relieved, actually, because now there's no turning back. The decision's been made. All that's left is to let justice do its job. Did Chris call? He did. Yelled, begged, called me cruel. Same old pattern. I shrugged. Jasmine called me a bitter old woman. Patricia rolled her eyes. That girl is a nightmare. She is, but she and Chris deserve each other. That afternoon, Martin Green called me. Mrs. Johnson, the buyers of the ranch have officially filed a lawsuit against Chris. They want their money back, plus damages, and the bank has frozen the remaining funds from the sale until the investigation is over. And Chris, he'll be formally charged next week. Real estate fraud, aggravated theft, forgery. If he's convicted on all counts, he could be facing up to 10 years. 10 years? My son, 10 years in prison. I felt a tightness in my chest but pushed it down. And the Morrisons? They're protected. Their lease is valid and they won't be evicted. I've made that very clear to everyone involved. Thank you, Martin. Mrs. Johnson, may I say something personal? You may. I know this can't be easy, taking legal action against your own son, but you're doing the right thing. I've seen many cases of financial abuse against elderly parents. Most families do nothing out of guilt, fear, or shame. You're sending an important message. What message? That love doesn't mean accepting abuse, that being a mother doesn't mean being a doormat, and that some people only learn when they face real consequences. I hung up and stared out the library window. Children were playing on the playground across the street. Mothers sat on benches, talking, laughing. One of them held a baby in her arms. I remembered when Chris was a baby. So small, completely dependent on me for everything. I used to look at him and think, I'll protect this boy from anything. I'll raise him to be a good, honest, strong man. Where did I go wrong? The next few days passed in a mechanical routine. Wake up, coffee, work, home, sleep. Patricia came over for dinner a few nights, sometimes with her husband, Michael. They didn't ask many questions. They just sat with me, quiet and comforting. On Saturday, I got an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang, and when I opened the door, it was Denise, Jasmine's mother. She looked nothing like she had at the wedding. No makeup, red eyes, simple clothes. Mrs. Johnson, may I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat in the living room, a heavy silence between us. I came to ask you to drop the charges, she said bluntly. Chris is a good young man. He made a mistake, yes, but he doesn't deserve to have his life destroyed over this. A mistake? I repeated slowly. Denise, your son-in-law stole $134,000 from me, forged documents, sold property illegally. That's not a mistake, that's a crime. But he's your son. Can't you just forgive him? Forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Jasmine asked me to give you this. She handed it to me. I opened it. Inside was a check for $15,000. That's all they managed to gather, Denise said. The apartment is already being put up for sale. They'll pay everything back, little by little. They're just asking for a chance. I looked at the check. $15,000 out of $134,000, not even 12%. And the rest? It'll take time, but they'll pay it. Jasmine got a second job. Chris is looking for side work. They'll pay. I handed the check back. Denise, your son-in-law had months to do the right thing. He had chances to be honest, to truly apologize, to fix what he did. He chose to laugh in my face. He chose to tell me to swallow it. And now you want me to accept crumbs? But he's your son. And I'm his mother, the mother he stole from, deceived, humiliated. I stood up, the anger finally spilling out. Where was all this concern when he was spending my money on a wedding? When he was buying an apartment with stolen funds? No one thought about me then. Denise stood up too, grabbing her purse. You'll regret this. When Chris is in prison, when you're alone on holidays, on birthdays, you'll regret it. Maybe, I said, opening the door, but at least I'll regret it with my dignity intact. She left without looking back. The trial took place 4 months later, 4 months that felt like 4 years. Chris tried everything during that time. Tearful phone calls in the middle of the night, long messages begging for forgiveness. He even showed up at my door once, on his knees, pleading, but I didn't give in. I couldn't. The day of the trial dawned cold and overcast. I put on my gray suit, the same one I used to wear back when I worked at the law firm years ago. I pulled my hair into a bun, applied red lipstick. I wanted to look strong, because that's exactly what I was. Martin met me at the courthouse entrance. Ready? He asked. Ready? The courtroom was full. Chris and Jasmine sat on the other side with their attorney, an expensive-looking man who had probably eaten up whatever money was left in legal fees. Chris looked thin, dark circles under his eyes. Jasmine sat beside him, tight-lipped, gripping his hand. The prosecutor laid out the evidence methodically. Bank statements, the forged power of attorney, testimony from the notary proving he'd never been present, the Morrisons' testimony about the fraudulent sale, my own testimony about how Chris had taken advantage of my illness to deceive me. The defense attorney tried to paint Chris as a desperate son, just trying to help his elderly mother. Claimed I had authorized everything and was now confused, having second thoughts, but the evidence didn't lie. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. In the case of the state versus Christopher Johnson, on the charge of aggravated theft, we find the defendant guilty. Chris dropped his head. Jasmine sobbed loudly. On the charge of real estate fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. 3 guilty verdicts, each word hammering down like a nail in a coffin. The sentence came a week later, 6 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3, full restitution of the $134,000, plus interest and damages, compensation to the buyers of the ranch, a permanent criminal record. Chris cried when the sentence was read. He looked at me through his tears, and for the first time since it all began, I saw real remorse in his eyes. Not regret for being caught, remorse for what he had done, but it was too late. I walked out of the courthouse and took a deep breath. The cold air filled my lungs. Patricia was waiting for me on the steps, and when she saw me, she opened her arms. I fell into that embrace and finally allowed myself to cry. Not from sadness, from relief. It was over. The battle was over, and I had survived. The months that followed brought changes I never could have imagined. With Martin's help, I managed to recover $70,000 from the sale of Chris's apartment. The rest would come in monthly payments through wage garnishment once he was released. The Morrisons sent a huge gift basket and a beautiful card thanking me for protecting their family. But the biggest change came from an unexpected place. 2 months after the trial, I received a call from a local elder protection organization. A woman named Sandra had read about my case in the newspaper. "Mrs. Johnson, your story touched a lot of people. We'd like to invite you to speak at our workshops on financial abuse of seniors, show others that they can stand up for themselves." And that's how it started. I began with small talks, community centers, church groups. I told my story. I saw tears in the women's eyes, recognition, hope. "My son takes my retirement check every month," a 70-year-old woman told me after one talk. "He says it's to help me, but I never see the money. I thought it was normal." "It's not normal," I told her, holding her hands, "and you can do something about it." In the first 2 months, I helped 3 women report abuse. I accompanied them through legal processes, testified as an expert witness, connected victims with attorneys. My pain had found purpose. Patricia joined me. Together, we started a support group that met every Tuesday night at the library. We called it Strong Women. It started with 5 women. Within 6 months, there were 23. I had lost a son, but I had gained a community. On my 68th birthday, Patricia threw me a surprise party. When I walked into the community center, there were 50 people there. Women I'd helped, new friends. Even Martin showed up with his wife. A huge cake read, "Dorothy, Warrior and Inspiration." I cried. This time, tears of happiness. "Give a speech," someone shouted. I stood in front of those people and looked at every face, faces of women who, like me, had been hurt, but not broken, wounded, but not destroyed. "A year ago," I began, "I received a message from my son saying he had stolen everything from me. In that moment, I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost everything, my money, my son, my dignity." I paused, wiping away tears. But I didn't lose anything. I gained something far more valuable. I got my strength back. I got my voice. I gained the certainty that I deserve respect, even from my own child, especially from my own child. The women applauded. And I gained you, every one of you. This family I chose, and that chose me back. So thank you for reminding me that starting over at 68 isn't the end. It's just a new chapter. More applause, more tears, more hugs. That night, I went home and sat on my couch, the house quiet but no longer lonely. I picked up my phone and scrolled through photos from the party, smiling faces, real friendship, real purpose. There was one unread message from Chris, the first in months. Mom, I understand now. I understand why you did what you did. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you, of the strong woman you've always been, and that I was too foolish to see. I love you. I stared at the message for a long time. A part of me, the part of a mother that never fully dies, felt a warmth in my chest. But I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe someday. Or maybe not. Because I had learned something essential. Self-love comes before a child's love. Dignity is not negotiable. And forgiveness does not mean forgetting. I stood up, walked to the hallway mirror, and looked at the woman staring back at me. Gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes, but eyes that were bright, strong, alive. You did it, I told my reflection. You survived, and you're happier than you've ever been. And it was true. At 68 years old, after losing my husband, my money, and my son, I had found something no one could ever take from me, myself. I turned off the light and went to bed. Tomorrow was a strong women meeting. A new woman was coming, a victim of abuse by her grandson. She needed to hear that she wasn't alone, and I was there to tell her exactly that.